Thank you for tuning in to MacroView Television, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Wu Ruiguo. On today's program, we're delighted to have a scholar who specializes in Taiwan's relationship with ASEAN member states, and he's a very good friend of mine, Professor Chiang, Associate Professor of Political Science at Suzhou University here in Taipei. Chiang, welcome to our program.
Hello.
Well, Johnny, I'm going to start off with a very recent visit by U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, to attend the Asian Regional Forum at Thailand's resort island of Phuket. And upon arrival, she made a very, somewhat of a mild surprise, statement by saying that the United States is back. What do you think that she meant by such a statement?
Well, I think that's very interesting for us to watch, especially the ASEAN Regional Forum meeting being held by Thailand last week. And especially for the United States, this meeting has a lot of meaning to say. When you mentioned that Clinton, when she arrived and she said, well, the U.S. is back, I think behind that statement, there's lots of political meanings,
of course,
and geopolitical meanings behind. I think number one, that means the U.S., the current administration, especially for Obama, I think he's trying to kind of modifying or adjusting the U.S. policy toward East Asia. As you know, in the past 8 years, during the George W. Bush, the U.S. has put a lot of efforts in either counterterrorism or in Iraq or Middle East.
Yes.
But did not pay much attention to the East Asia or even the whole Asia.
Okay.
So a lot of strategic environment has been changed, including ASEAN is moving toward a community.
Yes.
And East Asia is having its own integration economically, especially. So I think the U.S. already think, in terms of policy, is kind of lag behind the region. So number one, the statement means the U.S. is adjusting its policy.
Okay.
Number two, I think very important is try to make the engagement as the first priority for the U.S. policy in the future East Asia regions. Use the engagement to influence the ASEAN community buildings or East Asia integration in the future, especially by the so-called soft powers. That is the, in terms of the value. For example, human rights values, for the market economy value. Try to put those values into the process of the ASEAN community buildings. I think that would be, in terms of national interest, it would be better for the U.S. in the future.
Okay.
And number three, I think also very important, that is to demonstrate or to show one thing, that is the U.S. is coming back to compete with China in this region. Because in the past few years, China has been developing very much in terms of regional powers or influence in this region. I think the U.S. already got that. So, at this moment, it's time for U.S. to say, well, if we have the so-called G2 in international affairs or global affairs, why not in the regional affairs? Okay. So I think they try to demonstrate that U.S. try to have the G2 in East Asia regions. And finally, I think it's also very important is to try to, especially for the Northeast Asia, that is North Korea.
Yes.
Because the six-party talks, is failed right now. It's very difficult to continue. So how to use the multilateralism or multilateral platform?
Yes.
I think it's very important for Obama administration, especially it's Democratic parties. And for Democratic parties, policies in the past, they used to, apply the multilateral approach to the global issues.
Yes.
So I think when the Clinton say, well, the U.S. is back to Asia, especially during these multilateral meetings, there's another meaning to say that is the U.S. try to use the multilateral approach to deal with the regional hot issues.
Okay. I think what was important, Johnny, from your earlier explanations regarding U.S. policy changes towards Asia, two things that's very important is probably on some international issues, but certainly on most of the regional issues, the United States doesn't look at it as a unipolar world anymore. Certainly would like to see China more involved in the regional affairs, and certainly on some international issues as well. And second is that U.S. foreign policy objectives are also diversifying. Used to, like you said, under George W. Bush, the priority seems to be the war on terror, okay, and also subsequently the Middle East, the Iraqi war and the rebuilding efforts after that. But the fact of the matter remains is that in the last few years we see Chinese influence in the region, in Asia, growing, particularly economically, but also socially and also security-wise. In that sense, I think the United States felt there might be somewhat of a budding crisis emerging, because what is at stake is the U.S. credibility, to countries in this region, whether they can count on the United States to be a reliable partner. But what is more interesting was from your statement is that maybe the United States is coming back to Asia in competition with China. I mean, we've seen that scenario being tossed around quite a bit. Do you really foresee that more intense relationship may develop between Washington and Beijing, and in what area would that friction happen most likely in the Asian, East Asian domain?
Well, I think that's very interesting and very important question. But at this moment, I think it's very difficult to predict what kind of relationship would be in the future. However, from my perspective, I do believe the situation in the current time is very different from the situation in the Cold War. The whole environment is different. And what the United States need for China now is cooperation more than confrontation.
Yes, okay.
So I would see more cooperation between these two countries.
Okay.
But of course, the U.S. would like to maintain its own national interest in the process. So for the future, especially in the near term, I would say the U.S. will try to find a way, to accommodate Chinese influence in the region, but at the same time maintain its own national interest.
Okay. Now that Johnny, with the United States trying to reassert itself in a more prominent way in Asian affairs, how would you think the reactions for other countries that also have substantial interest in the region, for example, India, and also the European Union, how would they react to the U.S. re-emerging as a very important player in regional affairs?
I think those countries you mentioned are all very important stakeholders in this region. So when the U.S. say, well, I'm back, I think for them, each country has very different interpretation.
Yes.
For the coming back and the U.S. coming back. For example, for India, I mean the Clinton also just visit India during this trip. And they signed a very important treaty that is to transfer high technology, I mean the high tech, especially in nuclear usage, civil usage for India in the futures. I think that kind of sending a green light to India, and also very important for both countries in the next 10 or 20 years. Okay. So I would see India would like to see the U.S. coming back to the region.
Okay.
Because India can have the high technology from the United States.
Yes.
And especially when the India is experienced its rapid economic development. Mm-hmm. And what India needs most now is the energy.
Okay.
So how to have a very stable energy supply is very important for Indian economy.
Yeah, for its continued
growth.
Yeah,
so for this treaty, I think the very important meaning for India is to get energy supply, mm-hmm. The technology supply mm-hmm. From the U.S. Mm-hmm. And also the treaties also cover the weapon.
Okay.
The weapon procurement.
Yes.
For mm-hmm. India from the United States. Mm-hmm. So in the other way, that will secure India's,
continued importance.
That's right, in the regions.
Yes, okay.
And
we're going to take a short break, Johnny, and we'll be right back to the Taiwan Outlook. And we'll continue this discussion with Professor Chiang from the Suzhou University's Political Science Department. I'll see you in 2 minutes.